So, since we are still at the beginning of the Elvish month, this is episode number 3, I wanted to explain something about the Elvish languages from the Tolkien Legendarium that you may not really understand as a beginner or as somebody new to this whole world. Basically, if you've ever been on Duolingo, you might have seen other fantasy languages on there, mainly Klingon and High Valyrian. Also Esperanto, but it's a constructed language but not a fantasy one. So why is it that all the other popular Conlangs, constructed languages are on Duolingo, but Elvish languages, mainly Sindarin, Quenya, maybe even both, which are equally as popular as those languages, don't have a course on Duolingo, aren't on there. And that's something that's very important to understand if you're a beginner, because this may influence all of your future Elvish learning. So, as you might know, Professor Tolkien was a language enthusiast. He loved languages, he loved learning them since a very young age, and even creating them since his late teens, maybe early 20s. So basically, he started creating languages over a century ago from right now. That's crazy. There are those famous stories when during the war, different battles, maybe not during the, actual fighting, but, during the encampment and stuff like that, he actually was creating his legendarium, his languages, coming up with his stories. And, he just basically created, when it comes to languages, whatever he wanted. One language, another. For example, the first versions of Sindarin were called Gnomish, like it was the language of the gnomes. Then it transformed through different versions as well, and then finally became Sindarin. So basically a set of words, rules that Mr. Tolkien came up with as Gnomish evolved slightly, changed a little bit, and then became Sindarin later on. Our professor was just freestyling languages. Just whenever he had free time, he would, create his languages, and then he started writing his stories. So when he finally finished his stories, he had the refined versions of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and later the Silmarillion. The languages that he used within them weren't really designed for publishing. They were his passion projects. So basically whatever he had, when it comes to Sindarin, Quenya, other languages, however advanced the language was at the time, however much he created of it, and he needed to use this language for the story in a particular part of the book, he didn't really advance the language further. He just used what he had and came up with the rules he needed that he didn't have yet. For example, for the Moria Gate inscription, stuff like that, that was in Sindarin. And he just put the languages, however finished they were, into the book, creating some new rules, maybe some new words, just for the exact example that he needed them for. And so then, he finished the books, published them, and he never really got around to fully completing his languages. Because mainly, I believe that he just didn't feel the need to. Again, they were his passion projects. That's it. Not for commercial recognition, not for any awards, just for fun. Also, there's this famous clip.
One thing was, Elvish is too complicated, I've never finished making it.
But then, mainly after his passing, a community of Elvish learners started forming. They started advancing the languages, and today we call that Neo-Elvish. So rules and words that were created after Mr. Tolkien's passing, usually by the community. And sometimes they are 100% correct. Just, somebody took one rule that's very well attested within the legendarium, within a particular language, and he noticed a similarity, that another word can be basically put through this rule. Technically that's Neo-Elvish, but it's basically well attested and we can say confirmed, correct. But on the other hand, some Neo-Elvish words and rules are total theories basically, and guesses, and aren't based on any attested examples, words, and just basically are based more on the intuition of whoever created that word. So we have to be careful with Neo-Elvish, and I think that that's what Duolingo wants to avoid very much. They need to know that this language, the version that they will put on their platform, is 100% correct, and also, represents the original vision as well. They need to know that there aren't any contradictions and that everything is well attested, at least. And while it is a very difficult thing to do, when you have this commercial product like Duolingo, this commercial app, there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders and you have to be careful. And that's it basically. However, to solve this problem, I decided to create my own Sindarin and Quenya courses in my community called Elvish Mafia, which you can check out in the description. I used only the most reputable sources, mostly original ones, or well-attested Neo-Elvish, a little bit. So basically, I did what Duolingo couldn't. There are also interactive exercises, so it's basically like Duolingo, but in a video format. So check it out if you want to learn and master Elvish. But either way, I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Elvish Month. Na ver.